Good morning. Welcome to episode 82 of Duval Rundown. 2025 NFL free agency begins in about 3 hours. Unofficially, the tampering window opens at noon today on Monday, March 10th. Free agency officially begins on Wednesday at noon, I believe, Eastern time, New York time, where the league office is. But yeah, we can expect, we've already seen a lot of trades happen, a lot of extensions happen, where players are returning to their former teams, but players can sign with new teams starting in just a couple hours. So I'll offer some final predictions for what the Jaguars might do. But first, it's time for another Monday mock draft. I did a mock before this episode, and I had the Jaguars trading back to the 18th overall pick with the Seahawks in order to acquire not just the 18th overall pick, but DK Metcalf. Obviously, that's not going to happen anymore because DK Metcalf yesterday was traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers and signed a massive contract extension that pays him about $30 million per year. And so, DK Metcalf, definitely a good player. I don't know if he's worth that much, so I'm not necessarily miffed that the Jaguars didn't go out and trade for DK Metcalf. But last week on Tuesday's show, me and Hayes went over potential trade back scenarios for the Jaguars with our 5th overall pick. And I would still consider the Seahawks an option at 18th since they did trade Geno Smith a couple of days ago to the Las Vegas Raiders. So they might be looking for a rookie quarterback, but realistically, they're probably entering a multi-year rebuild and shouldn't feel pressure to get a new quarterback on their roster immediately. That'll be a starting caliber. So I'm a little bit iffy. Like I think the Seahawks at 18 should be on everyone's radars, but I don't know how likely it is, especially with DK Metcalf off the board. So again, the mock that I had prepared isn't going to work. So let's go ahead and do a live mock on PFF. Let me share my screen. Okay. PFF mock simulator. We're going to do 5 rounds. Again, we'll get to 7 rounds eventually, but I'm not going to pretend to know a lot of day 3 names right now. Let's go to the 5th pick. Let's see what trade back options there are. I think that the Jets at 7 are right there, and then the Raiders at pick 6 are pretty much going to be the main 2 options because I assume they would be potentially fighting over Shedeur Sanders and the right to pick him with the 5th pick, assuming Cam Ward is taken somewhere in the top 4 and Shedeur isn't taken in that spot. So again, most likely trade back scenarios I think is with either the Raiders at 6 or the Jets at 7 so that they can move up 1 or 2 spots to select a quarterback. So I'm going to see, it seems like the Jets are interested in trading up in this mock. So let me pick up their extra second. Let's see if that works. Oh, trade accepted. All right, so we got an extra second to play with in this mock. That's just too funny. The Jets traded up to take Ashton Genty. Okay, so we've now got I wasn't expecting that. That was good. So we've now got the 7th pick in this mock. The players off the board for audio listeners: Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Armand Mendu, Will Campbell, Ashton Genty, and Mason Graham. And so I guess I'll take Abdul Carter. Ted McMillan is also available. Tyler Warren, the Texas cornerback, Jahdae Barron. I like Malachi Starks a lot, but not at this slot. I guess I'll go with Abdul Carter. It doesn't really feel that realistic, but I'm not really in love with a lot of these other options. None of them is really speaking to me. I don't know. What do you guys think? Anyone in the comments? Carter's available, Floyd says. Let me just go with Carter. Don't think it's going to happen, but again, I am doing a mock every single Monday, and like I did last week when I picked, I think it was last week that I picked Ashton Genty in my mock, just going to go over various scenarios rather than just picking like Mason Graham or Will Campbell in every single one. So let's go with Abdul Carter. Don't expect him to be available at the 5th pick, let alone the 7th pick, but hey, Jags can use some pass rush. Be interesting to see in free agency whether they do sign an edge defender. It's also kind of tough because a lot of the edge defenders, like especially in the early period of free agency, they want starting caliber money, but also like a starting role. more often than not. And so I wonder if the Jaguars are going to have to do what contending teams usually do and kind of wait around for the second and third and even like later waves of free agency up until training camp to end up getting more of a rotational edge player. But yeah, we got a starting caliber edge player in Abdul Carter. And I don't think, even though I think that I wouldn't say edge is like the strongest position unit, but in terms of like the starting players for each position group, edge is probably strongest for Jacksonville since they have Josh Hines Allen and Trayvon Walker, but obviously need to add to that group. I think Abdul Carter is pretty much can't miss. So yeah. Gray Zabel is available with the 36th pick. I was actually planning on taking Georgia center. What is his name? I don't even see him on here. Did he get taken already? Wilson, yeah, Jared Wilson. I was planning on taking him with a 36 overall pick because there's not a ton of great center prospects in the draft. It's okay, but there's more so a lot of guards, and there's not really a lot of good free agency options at center either. Obviously, the Jaguars now need a starting center after Mitch Morse retired late last week. So I was planning on taking Jared Wilson there, but if we're going to take Abdul Carter at 7, might as well take Gray Zabel at 36. I do expect Gray Zabel to go in the first round. He played offensive tackle at North Dakota State, but is projected to be arguably the top interior offensive lineman prospect in the draft. So let's go with Gray. Why not? All right, so now we got the 42nd pick that we picked up from the Jets when they decided to trade up for Ashton Genty. So with this pick, I do love an Alfred Collins. Braden Swinson from LSU, the edge, would have been interesting to me if we didn't get Abdul Carter with the first pick. I like the idea of going like secondary or specifically cornerback with this pick. But, surprised A.Z. Thomas from Florida State is this low in PFF. Let's just go with Alec Ayomanor. I think that similar to Gray Zabel, he might be a fringe. I definitely think Zabel is going to be taken in the first round at some point. I wouldn't be surprised if Alec Ayomanor, the wide receiver from Stanford, is also taken in the first round. But if he gets to the 42nd pick, or realistically the 36th pick, the second rounder that the Jaguars do own, I think they would heavily consider Alec Ayomanor because he's more of like an X receiver, a perimeter receiver who can play in the slot. Almost like a Brian Thomas or even a Gabe Davis, as opposed to being like a true slot guy like a Chris Godwin or a Cooper Kupp, who would really fit Liam Cohen's offensive scheme. But Ayomanor definitely has like enough versatility to be able to play a couple different positions. You can see the intangibles show up in his play from the way that he runs routes. Like he's more of a route runner that kind of uses pace and kind of sets up the defensive backs as opposed to just winning straight up with athleticism and burst at like the top of his stems. But still, he has urgency in his routes. He has definitely a lot of urgency in his yards after the catch efforts and as well as his blocking. I think Jack Beck probably has a crown for the best blocking wide receiver in this class, but Alec Ayomanor I think is pretty up there. So we'll go with Alec with our third pick in this mock. Again, with the pick that we got from the Jets in the first round trade back. PFF assuming the mock. Now we've got pick 70. So we've got an edge, an interior offensive lineman, and a wide receiver. So now I'm thinking again a secondary or maybe just defensive line, but probably need to bulk up the defense in general. Mason Taylor is there though. No, I'm going to wait on a tight end. Because the Jaguars, after releasing Evan Engram last week, they now have Brenton Strange, but Luke Farrell is also a free agent. Maybe they bring back Luke Farrell, but even if they do, this is such a great tight end class. It would certainly make sense for them to take a tight end at some point. But I think I do want to prioritize defense. Not really seeing a lot of secondary guys. I know that some people like Sebastian Castro of Iowa, but I'm going to go with my guy, Tennessee interior defensive lineman Omar Norman Lott. I think he's a great fallback option in day 2, assuming the Jaguars end up not taking Mason Graham out of Michigan with their 5th overall or just first round selection, because I think that Omar he actually had the same amount of sacks as Mason Graham last year. They each had 5, even though Norman Lott had less than half as many snaps. He led all FBS defensive tackles, if not all FBS defensive linemen, but I think just defensive tackles in pass rush win rate last year, according to Sports Info Solutions. He's a little bit undersized, not necessarily like a 2-gapper or a run stuffer or anything like that, but Omar Norman Lott would definitely give the Jaguars pass rush juice, so I'm going to go with him with the 3rd round selection. Getting a lot of recommendations from Floyd. I'll keep checking the comments. Oh, Marcus Mbao. I did already go with an interior offensive lineman in Gray Zabel, and I would be shocked if the Jaguars didn't sign at least one starting caliber interior offensive lineman, since they've got both the center void to fill after Mitch Morse and the right guard void to fill with Brandon Sheriff hitting free agency. Yeah, Marcus Mbao, I think that's how you pronounce his name, from Purdue. He's a tackle. He's a guy that a lot of people are projecting to be interior offensive lineman, a guard at the next level. But I do think that he can play tackle as well. And so he's potentially a starting guard, potentially a swing tackle, potentially even a starting tackle. But I'm really a big fan of Marcus Mbao. Wasn't expecting his name to still be here. So he will be the 88th overall selection for the Jaguars. So far we've got, of the 5 – oh, crap, I accidentally took the wrong player. Shoot. Can I go back? That's brutal. I accidentally took a running back out of Kansas State. Oh, well. I guess that's what I get for laughing so hard at the Jets for taking Genty. So we accidentally took DJ Giddens instead of Marcus Mbao. I was going to say 4 of the first 5 picks in this mock were to the trenches, but that's no longer true. So, oh well. Again, I do want to address the secondary. Jonas Sanker is a name I recognize for Virginia. Obviously, the Jaguars will need kind of like a free safety who shouldn't necessarily be expected to be like the middle of the field defender for the majority of the snaps, but it would make sense for the Jaguars to find a direct replacement for Andre Cisco as someone who can play the single high spot. Jonas Sanker is more of a box safety. He's someone that can play split field deep safety, but is, again, definitely more of a box safety playing up closer to the line of scrimmage. I guess more of a Cam Chancellor type than an Earl Thomas type. And I think that even though there's some interesting names, Darnell Savage, Antonio Johnson, Andrew Wingard, that could potentially start at strong safety for the Jaguars, Jonas Sanker is a guy I like. So I'm going to address secondary with that one. Our next pick is 125 in the 4th round. That was the 106th pick in the 4th round. We're going to go with Willie Lampkin, the guard out of North Carolina, because my past offensive line pick was botched when I accidentally took the running back. Willie Lampkin has some pretty interesting measurables. I think he's just got good weight, but is really short. And so I've seen a friend of the show at Pint of Jack on Twitter/X has said maybe have him be a guard, but also cross train as a fullback. That'd be pretty interesting. But Lampkin is just a guy on my radar as kind of a later interior offensive line prospect. So we'll go with him since I recognize his name. We got 2 more picks? No, 1 more pick. The 5th round, because it's a 5-round mock. 5th round, pick 143. I feel like I need a cornerback. Oh, no, I wanted to take a tight end. So let's just find the best tight end name. Oronde Gadsden II. That's my guy. Tight end out of Syracuse. He's like the 10th tight end, maybe like 9th tight end available on PFF's big board. But I just think that he's got the pass catching juice to potentially to fill in for Evan Engram. I don't think necessarily right away in year 1, especially since tight ends that's one of the positions that has the steepest learning curves in the NFL, going from college to the pros. But again, really strong tight end class. Definitely would make sense for the Jaguars to take at least 1, if not 2, honestly. But Gadsden, I really like out of Syracuse. I know that my Iowa people really like Luke Lakely. Bryson Nesbitt, the North Carolina tight end, is another deep sleeper, but I'm going to go with Gadsden to make sure I address the tight end position in this mock. And that'll do it. Let's wait for PFF to stop simming, and I'll share or I can just, we'll wait 1 second. 14 picks remaining. 10, 8, 5. Okay, let's see what grade I got from PFF. Stand by. Still loading. Ooh, A-, top 31st percentile. That doesn't seem as good, but A- grade from PFF. Got an A+ for trading back to get Abdul Carter. So to go over it again, got Abdul Carter with the 7th pick and a trade down with the Jets. Got Gray Zabel with the Jaguars, a 2nd-round pick. Alec Ayomenor, the Stanford wide receiver, with the Jets' 2nd-round pick. Tennessee interior defensive lineman Omar Norman Lott in the 3rd round. Accidentally took Kansas State running back DJ Giddens in round 3. Took Virginia safety Jonas Sanker in round 4. North Carolina guard, maybe fullback Willie Lampkin in round 4. And then Syracuse tight end Oronde Gadsden, the 2nd in round 5. Got an F for that one, but all the other grades from PFF are pretty solid. So I will tweet that out after the show. But yeah, other than that, you guys got questions? Let me hop back into here and do a little free agency preview. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through to make sure there's no specific questions. All right, Zach Travis, YouTube comment question. What's your prediction for first free agent signing? I am going to predict Chris Godwin. I have said multiple times that I think Chris Godwin and Cooper Kupp would both be great on paper fits for Liam Cohen's offense, but also great off the field fits for just the culture and the ecosystem that the Jaguars want to build under Cohen and Tony Baselli and new GM James Gladstone. I didn't want to say Godwin before last week, I guess, because I thought that he was going to re-sign with the Buccaneers for sure, because I thought that he was interested in finishing his career as a Buc, and objectively, Tampa Bay is very interested in bringing him back. But as of now, there's 2.5 hours until the tampering window officially opens, and he has not re-signed with the Buccaneers. And we've already seen this weekend a lot of players re-signing or signing contract extensions with their former teams before they officially hit the open market. So since Godwin has not hit the open market, I do think that, sure, there's a chance that, he talks to the Jags and maybe talks to the Pats, because the Patriots are another team that seems very interested in spending or just getting wide receiver talent at whatever cost necessary. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Patriots end up just kind of breaking the bank for Chris Godwin, or I wouldn't be surprised again if he gets offers from Patriots and or the Jaguars, and then the Bucs end up just matching it. But since, again, Chris Godwin seems like he's hitting free agency, that'll be my first prediction. I think the Jaguars will be going pretty much all in on Chris Godwin and have their sights set on him. And then when Chris Godwin signs with a different team, they'll set their eyes on Cooper Kupp, who has not officially been released by the Los Angeles Rams yet. I guess they're still holding out hope for a trade, but they did sign Devontae Adams over the weekend, and so now it'll be Tay Adams and Puka Nacua as Matthew Stafford's top 2 pass catchers in Los Angeles. So Cooper Kupp is not going to be a Ram, and I think that I don't know if anyone is wondering, could they get Godwin and Kupp? Unless Cooper Kupp is not interested in money at all and just wants to win, I think that would be the only scenario. But I also don't think that that's true. I think Kupp probably wants to get paid in addition to being a starter or whatever. So yeah, final official prediction for the Jaguars' first free agency signing is going to be Chris Godwin, but there are a lot of caveats with that. Raisha said on YouTube, what the heck are the Seahawks doing, by the way? It looks like they're trading away their entire offense. Yeah, I think DK is solid. I love Geno Smith. I think that he's a top 8 quarterback for sure. I think a lot of people would probably say, yeah, he's a top 12, top 15, a little bit better than average starter, but he was doing so much with so little. I know that obviously the Seahawks have had talented pass catchers in recent years, but their play calling has been not very helpful, and their offensive line especially has been among the worst in the league for a couple years now. And Geno, like his superpower is just pocket passing, being able to mitigate the pocket and deliver throws despite pressure. And so I'm really hoping that the Raiders, his new team, invest heavily in the offensive line this offseason. But they do have, I think, a really good play caller in Chip Kelly. They do have at least one good weapon in Brock Bowers, their tight end. So I'm rooting for Geno, but in terms of what the Seahawks are doing, I think they just were a little bit worried about becoming like the Steelers of the West, where they're just kind of like stuck in mediocrity. And I think that Geno especially, but Geno and DK and even Tyler Lockett were kind of just like raising that team up to be a mediocre, like wild card / divisional round playoff team that they were never, at least with the current roster and current setup, it was kind of hard for them to envision, I guess, having a higher ceiling. And so they said, if we're not going to have a higher ceiling with this roster, let's kind of tear it down and start from scratch, which I think makes a little bit of sense because they do have a rising second-year head coach in Mike McDonald, who I'm definitely a really big fan of. He was easily my favorite head coach addition last offseason, even though Dan Quinn does look pretty good right now for the Commanders. But yeah, I think the Seahawks were just worried that they were going to be stuck in mediocrity for a long time. This happens especially in the NBA, where teams like, I feel like the Magic was a good example of this, where like they didn't really have a lot of super high lottery picks, but they obviously weren't competing for titles either. And so you don't want to just be stuck in no man's land. As much as I like Geno, I think it's understandable what the Seahawks are doing. Dell, shout out Dell. Dell says, with BT on a rookie deal, we could throw money at a wide receiver for sure. Yeah, and I feel like Chris Godwin or Cooper Kupp would be better to throw money at because, like, yeah, hypothetically, you could have traded for DK and gave him $30 million a year, or hypothetically, you could still trade for T. Higgins, who has been franchise tagged by the Bengals, but has not officially signed that franchise tag because they still have time to work out a long-term contract extension or to potentially just trade T. But yeah, I think it makes a lot more sense because even though, Dow, I hear you even though Brian is on a rookie deal, you can pay other receivers, but you don't want to necessarily break the bank for other receivers, especially since you still got dead cap tied to Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, still got Cape Davis on the books. So yeah, I will be interested to see how the Chris Godwin market specifically shakes out, and especially if he doesn't sign with the Bucs. Because if he signs with the Bucs, it's like, obviously he's got that connection. But if he signs with the Patriots, it'll be interesting to be like, should the Jaguars have gone over that number or not? And it's especially interesting because last year we had a similar conversation with Calvin Ridley, where I think the majority of us knew that Calvin Ridley was a talented wide receiver, and I think that all 32 teams would just want his type of talent on their team, but it always comes down to cost, right? I don't think that a lot of Jaguars fans were interested in paying Ridley more than what the Titans offered him last offseason, and obviously that worked out just perfectly for the Jaguars because by losing Ridley to their division rival in free agency, they ended up having receiver as a bigger need and fell onto Brian Thomas with the 23rd overall pick last year. So yeah, excited to see how they spend in free agency in general, but especially at the wide receiver position, because I think that wide receiver would probably be the one position they'd be willing to kind of break the bank for. But outside of wide receiver, just to kind of wrap up this show and offer final predictions for what the Jaguars might do in 2025 NFL free agency. Mekhi Becton is a name that I've seen floating around. It seems like the Jaguars might have some serious interest in him. I'll be a little bit iffy about Mekhi because he was kind of borderline like a bust with the Jets as an offensive tackle, had a lot of weight issues and kind of like seemed like off the field issues. Not that he was like a bad guy, but more so just like his questions about like love of the game and like how hard he was willing to work and stuff like that, I guess. But then he signed a 1-year contract with the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles last offseason. Worked out supremely well for them, obviously. And it's Mekhi played great. I feel like was he a Pro Bowler? I don't know if he was a Pro Bowler, but he played at borderline Pro Bowl level. But it's just kind of like a buyer beware for Mekhi because A, he played under probably the greatest offensive line coach in the league today, if not one of the greatest of all time, and Jeff Stoutland up in Philadelphia. So definitely got some great tutoring from him, but also got some great tutoring from right tackle Lane Johnson, who's a walking Hall of Famer. Excuse me. And so I'm definitely a fan of Anton Harrison at right tackle for the Jaguars, but he's pretty young and they don't have a current solution at center. And so I'm a little bit worried that Mekhi Becton is going to be like last year was his prove it deal. So I'm a little bit nervous that he's going to like cash in and just not be nearly as good. But Becton is a name that I think that everyone should have on their monitor. So Chris Godwin, Mekhi Becton, and then 2 defensive tackles. I think defensive tackle would definitely be a smart area to just kind of like shore up the roster in free agency. BJ Hill is kind of my personal favorite. He was with the Bengals for the past couple of years. He was originally drafted by the Giants and is just the classic veteran defensive tackle who has some solid versatility, can give you a little bit of pass rush juice, but he's really just like a 3-down veteran player who'll give you 700 solid snaps in a season. And so that's just like, I think the perfect relative, like no name, like the perfect, like not very splashy, but very good free agent signing, I think would be BJ Hill. Another name that's been brought to my attention by Floyd Brooks and other people commenting in this chat is Bobby Brown, I think his name is, the interior defensive lineman from the Rams. I would be a little bit surprised if the Jaguars didn't get anyone from the Rams, whether it's Bobby Brown, Cooper Kupp, former Florida Gator wide receiver DeMarcus Robinson is a free agent. I expected the Jaguars to be pretty interested in Tutu Atwell, actually, before he signed a new deal with the Rams. There might be 1 or 2 other names that I'm missing, but with the obvious connection to James Gladstone, but also Liam Cohen as well, certainly wouldn't be surprised if an LA Ram is signed by the Jaguars or even a Green Bay Packer. Jair Alexander has, similar to Kupp, he has not officially been cut, but I think he's expected to be cut. And so Alexander is a name to watch out, but also Eric Stokes, who's another Packers cornerback, had a pretty up and down career. I don't know if it's because of him or because like there was never really a great scheme fit or what like the disconnect is, but he was a former, I think he was actually a first rounder in the same draft class coming out of Georgia as Tyson Campbell. And so it'd be interesting if the Jaguars ended up trying to pair up Eric Stokes and Tyson Campbell in the secondary, former Bulldog teammates. I think that's all I got. We'll be back tomorrow at 9:04 a.m. with Hayes to review the first day of tampering of unofficial free agency. It'd be interesting to see. I almost feel like yeah, this is definitely a very exciting day and an exciting time, but it would almost be a win if the Jaguars didn't sign anyone today, or like if they sign Godwin, obviously they'd be a win. But I think like anyone besides Godwin, I wouldn't be miffed if they didn't get anyone, because that's just kind of the way that good teams work, is they don't like overpay just to get talent into the building in the very beginning of free agency. They kind of wait around for the later waves of free agency when they can go kind of more bargain hunting. And so I'm interested to see if the Jaguars like really feel like they need to get some new bodies into the building, especially with Evan Engram, Christian Kirk, Mitch Morse, and Brandon Sheriff being offensive starters they need to replace, plus Andre Sisco and Ronald Darby in the secondary on defense. But yeah, so it'll be interesting. We'll be back at 9:04 a.m. So, but my point is, like, if the Jaguars don't do anything today, don't be upset. And if anything, you should probably be happy that they don't do anything. But I'm excited. Hopefully you guys are excited. That'll do it for today's episode. See you guys here 9:04 a.m. tomorrow. I'll be back with Hayes Carline. Alrighty. See you guys.